Welcome to Final Gravity, the show where we take evaluation to a whole new level beyond judging. We evaluate recipe to glass. This is not a style show, it's a your beer show. Unlike blind judging, Brandon Martin and James Lalonde will evaluate your beer alongside your recipe and process. Based on what you wanted to brew, we'll provide perception, feedback, and a little unsolicited advice.
Hey, let's have some fun again. Quick turnaround.
We're fancy tonight.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we got some good ones on slate. We got Golden Strong, and we got a Porter and a Brown Ale. This can be some fun tonight.
And then we've got some score sheets from a previous listener's beer that we really, really enjoyed that we're going to talk about at the end here. So
that'll be a lot of fun.
It should be a good night.
Yes, indeed. So whose beers we got here?
So we've got, I think we had both these guys the last time around. We've got Matt Engelman, who's a local guy, and he sent us a coffee vanilla porter that we're going to do. And we've got Michael Freitag, who's got a Belgian Golden Strong for us. And then we've got our own Chris Crowley gave us a London Brown that we're gonna try. He and I actually brewed this one together, and I really like what I've tasted from it so far. I'll be interested to see how that one is.
All right, good.
And then, like I say, a couple of score sheets to go over. Should be fun.
And if I recall right, that may be the second batch of this attempt at the style. And the first one, didn't we do it before and say it was a really, really fine?
No, this is a different recipe.
It's a completely different recipe.
Yeah, this is Zach Ragsdale's ridiculously complicated brown ale. Hopefully, Chris will get a chance to send us the recipe here, because it's one that when I looked at it, I thought I've had this beer before and I love it. And it's a good thing, because otherwise, looking at this recipe, I'd never brew this. It makes me angry to look at it.
Interesting story behind that one. I actually judged that recipe before what became his award-winning one, and went back at him and said, "Here, add some more lactose." So you'll see in that recipe, there's a lot of lactose. Just at first, it was just too low. And I said, "Hey, bump it up," and next thing you know,
there was a lot of lactose.
He's
in it,
pulling a little awards, so that was exciting.
Yeah, that was the source of the infamous Bluebonnet Stein picture that we all received, which was Zach completely naked with a Stein over the cash and prizes in his hotel mirror.
So I personally am very glad that I didn't see that.
It was actually a pretty rad photo.
I didn't know it existed, and I'm trying to erase it from my mind by having a little Golden Strong.
All right,
we're going to jump into some beers.
So actually, I believe we started off this whole show on our very first episode doing a Belgian Golden Strong. You and I have very Belgian Golden Strong opinions about it.
Yes.
And there's some pitfalls that are very, very common to homebrew that we're both very hard and fast on, so I'll be interested to see this. It's one of my very favorite styles when it's done right.
I agree. It's one that I like to make. In fact, in process right now of building up a yeast cake, so that way I can do it within the next 3 to 4 weeks. I love the style, and like you said, I think we did do it at one of the very first episodes, and we talked long and hard. Had a little bit of caramel malt that was giving a little sweetness. And as I looked at this one, I don't think there's any caramel. What do we got?
Well, actually, the last one we had was really, really well done. And then I think it was 2 days later, you and I happened to be in the shop when someone came in with one of their Belgian Goldens. And actually, he's a listener that has given us some beer to have before. I can't remember his name, but his beer is very good. But he just kind of made the classic homebrewer mistake of putting some caramel malt in there, and we both told him to drop it out. So this one is an interesting recipe looking at it. It is 11 pounds of Pilsner. So I'm assuming this is a 5-gallon recipe. 11 pounds of Pilsner, pound and a half of Vienna, and 2.5 pounds of Simplicity candy syrup. So probably just a neutral, clear candy syrup. He used the Omega Belgian ale yeast, which I've not used before. I'd be very interested to try that, except that I'm hooked on one particular Belgian yeast lately.
Me too.
So he started the fermentation at 65 degrees, let it raise to 78 degrees over a week. His mash schedule is he did a protein rest at 131 for 20 minutes. Saccharification rest at 146 for 40 minutes. I really like that. Mashed out at 168. The hops are 1 3/4 ounces of Hallertau Blanc at 7.2 acid for 60 minutes, and then 1 1/4 ounces at 5 minutes, which I really, really like that hop. I feel like a style like this where the hops are not supposed to be prominent or stand out, that's one that you can use and add a little bit of flavor to it because it's nice and delicate and kind of it sits in there with the other flavors and it won't ever dominate. I really like that.
I've
hop
never
a lot.
used it. Yeah, and then I wouldn't put any late, but I'm really curious to see how this one comes out. It's a little darker on the color.
A little darker, yeah.
It's a little golden. I mean, I wouldn't think a pound and a half of Vienna would do that. It may have, or it may be an early boil, starting to add some color to it. But head looks good. It's clear. I get a nice fruity aroma, even a touch of spice. So
A little bit of spice in there, yeah. It's a real light aroma, isn't it?
yeah, it's light. I mean, it's almost all yeast. Grain. The malt's a little grainy.
I do get some grainy malt come through in that though. I like that.
And I may be getting a little bit of that hop. I get a floral note that is not something that I normally look for in this style, but I'm picking that up just a touch. So there's a little floral, a little fruit, and a little bit of spice, which I'm not familiar with that yeast as well. A lot of times the non-traditional yeast that are coming out that are Belgian may have more of a blend of the fruit and the spice, whereas some of the traditional ones are heavy on the spice to make your triples, or heavy on the spice or the fruit to make your golden strongs.
And that's something we've talked about several times too. That this is this beer is so close to being a triple, and really the difference is that a triple is going to have more of the spicy phenolics, where this is going to be. Really, a Belgian Golden should be almost no spice to it at all, and more of the fruity and kind of the bubblegum esters from the yeast.
Correct. I started sampling a lot of malt in it, and I get a lot of sugary sweet up front.
I do.
How did he give us a final
so
gravity?
Original gravity was 1074, final gravity was 1012.
1012, and it tastes 1012.
It does taste 1012, and I really feel like, and this is tough to do when you're starting at 1074. I feel like you've got to get below 1010 on a Belgian Golden. It's really got to dry out well. And, you know, when we talk about it's got to do this and it's got to do that, we're really talking about brewing strictly to style.
Correct.
Not necessarily do I like this beer and would I sit down and drink a bunch of it and be hungover the next day. Because I'm going to have two different opinions on this beer, I can tell you right now, just by tasting it.
No doubt about it. I follow where you're going on it, and that little bit of sweetness. But I tell you what, the mouthfeel is nice. It's got a good medium body, just enough carbonation. It's not high. Sometimes they can go very high. Homebrewers have a real hard time going high.
Yeah.
But the alcohol warmth is so very welcoming. I mean, it really gets you back there in the gills a little bit.
And it's although it's got kind of a sweet finish to it, it's a real clean finish. There's definitely no off flavors in this at all. It's a nice clean fermentation. All that stuff.
Yeah, and I get more in the flavor. The yeast profile's coming out very much more fruity. I get very little of that spice note. It's a fruity.
Oh, really? I still get the spice note, but the fruit is there too, and a little bit of the bubble gum.
Yeah, and that's what I want. I mean, I want to see that. I want to see this one dry out some more. I really want to see it dry out a little bit more.
Yeah. So looking at his recipe, I'm kind of curious how. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it's Pilsner and Vienna. I mean, personally, I'd pull the Vienna out just because I think it's going to add a little bit too much richness to the flavor. You know, where you don't want richness to this flavor.
Yeah, I would too. I like what he's got here. It's a different interpretation of it, and by no means is the Vienna doing that. The mash looks like it's where it should be.
I mean, he mashed really low, just like I would have done. Yep. There's a high percentage of simple sugar, and 2.5 pounds of candy sugar is a lot of candy sugar.
So what did he tell us about his yeast prep?
Nothing. We don't have the extra notes here. It is possible that there may be a little underpitching in this. Yeah.
And that would have been the only thing that get this to poop out a little early, because I'm sure this yeast is going to go much further than 6-8%.
Yeah. Now you don't have the off flavors associated with underpitching.
Not at all.
It did clean up after itself.
Yes.
And all that stuff. It just, I think, Stubby talks about this. One thing you got to say for Stubby and his brewing, when he does these big Belgian beers, he maybe does the best job of any home brewer I've ever had. His triple is absolutely out of this world. And he says the key to it is a massive starter. He makes like a 5-liter starter with a Belgian yeast in it. And I think he puts 2 packs of yeast in that 5-liter starter.
I'd be doing the same thing.
And I think maybe that if I had to guess, I would say that would be the one thing about this, that it needs to be attenuated a little bit more. I think 4 points more.
Four points would put this over the top. And as it's warming and getting a chance to breathe a little, to me, I keep getting more and more fruit. It's getting all the fruit that I want. The spice is starting to settle a little bit. It's not as strong.
A little bit.
And I don't want much spice when it comes to the Golden Strong. I want to see that spice over in the triple, not in the Golden Strong. So I just, as I look through and evaluate, I see all of those great characteristics coming out. I want to just a touch more dryness, and it pushes this one all the way over the top. I go back and I like the twist of throwing a little bit of Vienna. Make it your own. Make it a little bit different. Doesn't necessarily have to go all the way to style.
You know what? I'll back up a little bit on that and say that I agree with you on the Vienna, that I don't know that I would pull it out. I think I would get the attenuation issue fixed first before I put my finger on the Vienna at all. It's only 1.5 pounds, and it is a base malt. It will attenuate out. So, maybe that just a touch of richness that it brings would be good if it would just attenuate a little bit more. So, I said I was going to have 2 opinions on this. And one is, if I was judging this, I would ding it pretty hard for a couple of things if I'm talking about strictly holding it to a Belgian Golden Strong. If I had brewed this and it was in my keg and I was drinking it, I'd be very happy with this beer.
No doubt about it.
A little too happy, I think, probably.
It still fits well within the very good range.
I agree.
It's well within the 30s, probably to the middle range of that.
I would figure at 32 on this is about where I would land. Yeah,
that's about where we are.
Mm-hmm.
What I am interested in is, talk to me about this Hallertau Blanc. I don't know that hop, and I'm getting other characteristics in this beer that I don't necessarily know are 100% yeast.
So I find it to be a little bit milder flavor than Hallertau. Like I say, I use it in beers like a late edition in a wit beer. I'll use it in that, where you wouldn't have a late edition in a wit beer normally. And it really blends in. It's got a very nice floral character to it. Hallertau already has a nice floral character.
And that's what I get. The Hallertau really, to me, when I use middle fruit, I get a lot of the rose. I get that kind of floral.
See, I think it's a little toned down from that is what I get. So, 1.25 ounces in a 5-gallon batch at 5 minutes, and you don't have any particular hop flavor standing out to you at all. I think it just blends really nicely into the spiciness of the yeast and all that. Really excellent hop choice, I think, for this. I love that hop. I use it all the time, and I don't get too far outside of the traditional hops that often. I'm a real purist.
Neither do I. I'm a purist. I'm a style purist, and so just interested to see what is bringing out of it. And I think that's the case. I think that may be giving it a complexity that doesn't hurt by any means. It does everything but help. It just goes in a different direction.
I will say I like the IBU balance on this a lot. It's got enough bitterness in there that even though it's a little attenuated, it's still balanced well, 100%. I think. I think you got the IBU balance just right. I would just try a larger pitch of yeast. I wouldn't change anything else to do a second batch. Although I will say that this yeast, I think, is going to be a little too spicy for a Belgian Golden.
Maybe. Maybe. I keep that the fruit just keeps coming out and out and out. I'd like to see him do the same thing and see if it'll dry out. Now, and if you like it this way, and a lot of commercial guys are making them that are a little sweeter like this, and they do very, very well, then continue to do that.
But your best Belgian examples, when you drink a Belgian one like Le Chouffe or something like that, and you go, oh, okay, I get it now. It's that extra little bit where you think, wow, we haven't quite figured it out over here on a commercial level. I don't know anybody doing it as well as the Belgians on the commercial level.
Mine is Tremmens. Tremmens is the one that jumps out, and it does that. It starts this same way. It gives you the little grainy, little bit of malt up front, and then get that sugary sweet note.
This is closer to Tremmens, isn't it?
Starts to dry out. Yes, it does. And it has the fruit that I expect out of Tremmens. and very enjoyable. Nice job.
Really nice beer. I would definitely brew this again because I have a feeling he'll blow through this keg pretty quick.
Yeah.
Or bottles or whatever it is. It's
maybe kept the slurry, and then you have a really big slurry that just goes to town. So thank you very much. We surely appreciate this.
Really nice beer. So we're going to move on to Matt Engelman's porter, which he brewed a coffee vanilla porter. Let's see here. So this is really one of my very favorite styles.
Oh, yeah?
Not just porter, but vanilla porter, and then coffee in there as well. I just think that those three flavors play so well together. I think this is an example of a beer that almost every one that I drink is really well done. You know, I don't run into too many vanilla coffee porters or vanilla porters or coffee porters that aren't really fun beers to drink and really good. Just this last couple days, I got a 6-pack of Pappy Slocum Stripper Dust. If you don't know Pappy Slocum out of Abilene,
I don't know who this is, and I don't know what that.
They're a little brewery out of Abilene, of all places, and they make a really nice vanilla porter that I drank a 6-pack of the other night around the fire out at hunting camp, and just really enjoyed the hell.
Now
out of
you
it.
owe me one can next time you go out there.
Yeah, I wish I had brought some back with me. Yeah, because it's a great little brewery and they do a really excellent job with it. We talk a lot about vanilla not just being a flavor that you're putting in a beer, but it's something that props up other flavors and accentuates them. And porter's perfect for it because a lot of times vanilla brings out chocolate.
Yeah, and sometimes porters can get a little lackluster because the roast can be a little restrained. Especially like on your English porter. Sometimes they can do that, and that little touch of vanilla will definitely prop up all kinds of other characteristics within the beer.
Look at the head on this beer.
It looks beautiful. It looks beautiful. It's dark brown. It's clear.
Big, moosey, puffy, and it's just sitting there. Hanging
big
out.
Coffee.
It's daring you. Yeah.
There's big coffee. Lots of roast.
Coffee can hurt your head retention a lot too. So he's got really good head retention on a coffee beer.
And coffee for me, I think it's very easy to make it burnt coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a detractor for me. Now I'll say that a lot of people love the big, heavy, burnt type coffee. I like the more subdued coffee.
Well, everybody's using cold brew these days, which takes that bitterness and that acrid flavor out of it. And he does say cold brew coffee. Now, that's kind of where his notes on this recipe end is add cold brew coffee at bottling to be determined. And I love that. Add it at the end. Yes. Wait till everything's done and add the right amount to make it taste right.
Without a doubt. I would never put coffee anywhere but at the very end.
Yeah. It's so tempting to steep it in the boil because, that's how you make coffee, but put it in the end.
No, I think cold brew's the way to go. And I'm getting big coffee.
Really nice coffee aroma.
That's really dominating.
I haven't even tasted it yet. I just want to sit here and smell it.
No, the vanilla is really sitting behind the coffee. There's the standard roast that's coming out.
And that's how it should be. The vanilla should be behind most of the other flavors. So let's look at the recipe here real quick. We got 74% crisp pale ale malt, 10% crisp brown malt, which is 1.4 pounds. Brown malt, notoriously, you have to be very careful how much of that you use. You can easily overdo it. Not a real common ingredient, but that is a real traditional English ingredient. 10.3% crisp Crystal 45. And 12 ounces of Breeze chocolate, which is 5.5% Breeze chocolate. Cool looking recipe. I like that a lot. For a beer like this, I often will accept real complicated recipes, but I love nice, simple like that. So he's got, let's see here, 22 IBUs of Fuggles at 60 minutes, and then another 5 IBUs of Fuggles at 10 minutes. Nice, dirty English hop.
Yeah, and this base absolutely screams a London English style porter.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's what he's got down here is London porter. Let's see here. Let's get to his water additions. Yeah. If I always screw up the water additions part. They always tell me what they're doing, and I always miss it. So at any rate, it looks like he's got 5 grams of calcium chloride, gram of Epsom salt, 4.5 grams of gypsum, some lactic acid, which is just going to be a pH adjustment. So it's a heavy chloride balance, which That will accentuate the malt, so that's what you want in a beer like this. And he used White Lab's London Ale yeast, the WLP 013. Okay. I love the London Ale yeasts.
Well, I'll tell you, as this one's starting to warm up, the fruit from the yeast, and I like that yeast as well, is starting to come out. I'm starting to pick up some of the aroma of a little of that fruitiness.
So he did make a starter. No details on the starter, but this is only a 5% beer, so it really is just a vitality starter that you're going to use. His starting gravity was 1052, finishing was 1014. I like that a lot.
Interesting, because it doesn't drink 1014. That's the coffee that is changing some of the bitterness.
Well, and the low ABV. I mean, when you get low ABV, you got to keep it up there over 1010, that 1012, 1014, just to keep some body in the Correct. Beer. It'll get too thin and watery. What is our ABV on this? Man, I need to be better about reading these sheets. They're hard for me to read.
Well, it just takes glasses when we get older.
Yeah, my arms aren't long enough anymore. Yeah, ABV is 4.99%, so 5%. I like that a lot. Let's see here. So he added the vanilla beans. He sanitized them, cut them open, and diced into large pieces and added to the secondary for 5 days. Let's see, how many vanilla beans does it say? Three whole vanilla beans. That's a lot for a 5-gallon batch.
That can be very, very risky. 5 days is not all that much, but especially when you start messing with spices can overdo in a matter of an hour or two, and you not know it. So always be careful with spices. I like to make a heavy, either a tincture or just take a like a quart aside and make it extremely overdo it with the spices, and then blend them back.
That's a great idea. I like that a lot. Yeah. He says that he sanitized the beans, cut them up, and then put them in the secondary. His plan was to let them sit for 2 weeks. He did a coffee edition trial with 4 samples, figured out what he wanted the balance to be, ended up with 8 cups of cold brew coffee going into it. So 6.5 gallons of beer with 64 ounces of cold brew coffee, packaged 7 gallons total. So it's a 7-gallon recipe. Okay. All right. So let's get to what we think about it here, because it's changing a lot as it sits here and warms up, I think.
It is. And I didn't get the vanilla at all when it was cold in the aroma. Now that it's warming, the vanilla is starting to come out, and it's really making the aroma very complex. At first, cold, it was all burnt coffee.
All coffee, yeah.
And it was that really espresso-like burnt coffee.
And I agree with you on that.
That I don't normally like. Now, as it's warmed, that aroma is shifting, and the coffee is starting to get into a more neutral coffee note, not a burnt coffee note, and the vanilla starts to come out and make it very much more complex. And I thought my first sip of the flavor kind of got that way, and I felt that I needed it to warm up a little bit, especially knowing the aroma is changing.
See, and I think the coffee was also very strong in the flavor when it was colder, and as it's warming up, the coffee is mellowing out some. Now, I am a big coffee person. I love really strong coffee, so I really like the really bold coffee flavor in this. I could see, though, how for some people this might be a lot of coffee. There's a very strong coffee flavor.
It's strong coffee.
Yeah.
But it's, again, as it's warm, it's not burnt coffee. It's got a good, nice coffee note. What I want in this beer is I want more caramel. I want some caramel
I agree with
to
you on
support that coffee.
Yeah.
The coffee just naturally is going to add some bitterness and change some of the base beer. Would have been interested to see where this base beer was before the coffee.
Yeah.
Just to see what the differences were. See if the coffee truly changed it and changed the perception. I mean, from the perception at this point in time, 1014, it drinks dry, and that's all that roast is drying it out. And even at 1014, but that caramel flavor would just take this a little bit further.
I agree with you more, and it's very rare that I drink a beer and say this needs more caramel flavor in it. And with this one, I completely agree with you. Now, I do know this Crisp 45 I used for a long time. I really liked it. It's a very light 45, and that's one of the things I liked about it. It's real easy to use. It's forgiving. You don't end up being too heavy-handed with your caramel malt. And the 1.4 pounds on here, I would almost go over 2 pounds. I think maybe 2.25 pounds. I think.
I definitely either go more. Definitely needs more just to balance out the coffee, but going a heavier, getting a 60, get something that's more caramel forward, less honey, and that light honey type of caramel.
Or if you want to stick with the richer British malts, maybe like a 70 or 77
yes,
or
70,
something like
yes.
that. Maybe add a half pound of that in there.
That's right. They don't do 60. They go to 75 or 70, right?
Well, Muntons does 60, I think.
Do they?
But if he's using almost all crisp in here, except for his chocolate malt, he's using Brew. So if you want to stick with crisp, I think it's a 77 that they make, and I really like that malt too. But I agree with you; it does need some more caramel in it. I think that the brown malt is contributing to that perception of dryness too.
No doubt.
And I think maybe I would dial the brown malt back just a touch too. Yeah. It's the between the coffee, the roast from the coffee, the roast from the chocolate, and then the brown malt also, it's got a very, very dry taste to it.
Yeah. Look at this beer.
Yeah, it's still
got
got head.
Beautiful.
Isn't that crazy?
It's got such a good color. This is definitely all the signs of a well-made beer, and it is. It's very enjoyable. We're nitpicking a really well-made beer.
Yes.
I truly enjoy it. And again, just nitpicking out, trying to find ways that would take this from that high very good and push it all the way to outstanding, and it'll go very, very fast to that level. Vanilla, I want more vanilla. I absolutely. If you're gonna call it vanilla, I want more vanilla. If you called this coffee only, I would have said there's vanilla notes in it, but I wouldn't necessarily have called out the vanilla myself.
See, I wouldn't have been able to pick up the vanilla in it if they didn't declare vanilla. If he didn't declare, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. I think the vanilla in this is just accentuating other flavors. And so it kind of depends what you want,
Absolutely, and that's where if you, let's say in this example, you use 3 beans. If you'd pulled off 2.5 to 3 gallons, put 3 beans in it, and if after that it's wow, this is perfect, you don't need to blend them back together. Or if it's overshoots, you can always add more of your base to bring them together. And that's something as a mead maker we do quite a bit for spices. Is you plan to make a smaller amount and just to add to it until you get the right level. Because once you overshoot, the only way to fix it is to make a whole nother batch and add and with the mead batch, it gets a little expensive and it's a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time too. Yeah. One of the things we've talked about a lot with vanilla is there's a lot of different ways to add it, and I've done it a lot of different ways in the past. I've done it where I just put a couple of beans, don't cut them up or anything, just put them in the bottom of the secondary and let it sit in condition. I've done it where I make tinctures, all that kind of thing. I think that I landed on my favorite way to do it is the way he did it, where you kind of cut them open, sanitize them, and put them in the secondary and let them blend in. I've also found that there is no, it's going to take this long. It's an agricultural product, particularly vanilla. This is Mexican vanilla. Madagascar vanilla will be different. Years will be different than others, and you've got to let it sit in there, and you've just got to taste it and taste it and taste it and wait till it gets to where it is. 3 vanilla beans is a lot of vanilla beans for a 7-gallon batch. I have a feeling that it just needed a little bit more time on there if he wanted more vanilla flavor in it. If he just wanted the vanilla to accent what was in there, I think it did that, but I wouldn't call it vanilla. I wouldn't declare it at all at the level it's at right now.
And, there's a chance. I mean, when he pulled it, it was perfect on the vanilla, and then the coffee just
ate it up. Yeah. That's very possible because it's a really prominent coffee flavor, which I like.
I'm liking this more and more on the coffee note.
I feel like this is a beer that you could give to somebody who is not a dark beer drinker. And, one of the things I try to explain to people who aren't craft beer drinkers who have a preconceived notion of what dark beer is, I tell them, you kind of have to calibrate your expectations for what's about to be in your mouth. If you're thinking, I know what beer tastes like and I'm about to put beer in my mouth, and you drink a dark beer, you're not going to be happy about it.
No.
But I bet you like coffee. And if you think, I like coffee and I'm about to drink coffee, and you drink the beer and kind of come at it from that point of view, I think you'd probably like it a lot more. And this has such a strong coffee note to it. I think you could give this to somebody who pays $8 for a cappuccino.
Yes, indeed.
And they would like it. You know,
I do that. I do that a lot when I do my oatmeal stout. Is somebody that's never had and really says they don't like those darker beers. I ask them first and foremost, you like coffee? You like coffee with cream? And they say yes. I said, okay, now you like it. If they say no, I said, okay, no, you're not going to like it. It's just not something that you like. But if you do like the coffee, what you've done is you've set their mind and you've set their expectation that I'm drinking something that's going to taste more like coffee than beer. And that, unfortunately, sometimes people have gone into it with one expectation and then had just the wrong beer that was the dark beer, or they had a stout that was burnt but not coffee like and not luscious like in that example, the oatmeal. And this one, it's that way as well. It's got a lot of coffee, and if you're really talking, hey, you like a good black coffee, you like an espresso, then hey, you're probably going to really like this beer. Even
my wife would love this beer, and she likes stouts and she likes dark, heavy beers, but coffee beers she always really likes, and this is a coffee beer first and foremost.
It's all coffee. It is definitely all coffee.
Chris, I don't know if you're listening. He tried to send me the recipe for the next beer that we're going to have here, which he and I brewed together, so I'm kind of familiar with it. But the link he sent me, I need a password to log into, so I'm not going to have the recipe in front of me for this. What I can tell you about it is, we talked about Zach won a Stein with it. For those of you who are not local, winning a Stein is the highest honor that you can have for local beer. It's our Blue Bonnet Brew Off competition, which is our long-standing signature competition around here, and the Stein is first place in the category. It's very hard to win. It's a big competition, a lot of entries, particularly in this type of category. I know it's a very crowded category, and he did win a Stein with this. It's a London Brown, which I'll let you talk a little bit about what that is, because it's a completely different thing than what people are used to.
It was a historical style. It's Southern English Brown is what it originally was called. This style goes way back, and it was a sweet beer. In fact, a lot of times they would actually add sugar after fermentation to make it sweet. You got to think cola. I mean, they intentionally were trying to make basically an alcoholic cola when you talk to this beer. So it's not going to have a lot of the roast that you would expect out of a standard London porter or a whatever style of English porter you want to call it. You had your old historical sweet ones, and then you had your more roasty porter that we're used to having. And then in the American styles of porters, they're even more roast forward. And a lot of times they're a lot bigger. Your English porters are very drinkable. Well, with this one, we're talking a relatively sweet beer. And that's what really brings it forward. The roast is going to be very much reduced. You're going to get a beer with low hop profile. In fact, basically none in the aroma or the flavor. Just enough hops to bitter it out. And then, like I said, goes back. They would sweeten it, literally add syrup to it to make it sweet afterwards. So it was an interesting, very low gravity beer. Might have been for kids.
That description and this recipe both make me want to hate it.
Yes.
Okay. But I had it before when Zach brewed it and loved it, so we went ahead and brewed it. Mine is still sitting in the fermenter. I need to keg it. I'm just letting it really sit in condition. I had this at his house off the tap and was blown away by how good it was. Every time I've had this beer, I really love it.
If my memory serves me right, I think it's mostly English pale malt. Then it's got about 5 or 6 different specialty malts.
There are 8 different malts in this.
Holy cow!
8 different malts. I think there's 2 or 3 Caramunics in it.
2 or 3 caramels, right? Yeah.
Caramunics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know there's a little bit of roasted barley, a little bit of chocolate.
Yep.
And then there is about 2 pounds of lactose.
2 pounds of lactose.
Well,
no, we put 2 pounds of lactose in a 10-gallon batch. Well, 12-gallon batch, I think.
There's a lot.
But it's a lot for a beer like this. That's a lot, you know. In a milk stout that's at 7 or 8%, putting a pound in a 5-gallon batch is a lot. This is nowhere near that ABV or that strong of a body.
No,
and we're putting the same amount of lactose in it.
Yeah, this is down in the 1040 to 1045 range. It's really, really low.
Now, I think we hit. Man, I wish I had the recipe notes with me. I think we were right at about 1050, 1051.
Okay.
Maybe 1049. It was right around 1050. We had really good efficiency. This is one of the very few beers that I've ever added water back to it because our efficiency was good, and I wanted to make sure we stayed at the target gravity.
That's a good problem to have, you know.
It is. It's just odd, you know, to put water back in a beer. I've done it a couple of times now, and I think, okay, I'm glad I did it, but it's just an odd thing to do. But I've become more and more where I want to hit the exact gravity that I'm shooting for.
Yeah, and as we look at this one, you can see it's not that dark brown. I mean, it's brown. The color is nowhere close to what your mind would normally say on a porter. Head looks good, off white, and it rose and then it has stayed for a long time. Nice, really tight bubbles.
So I will say, I don't know how long this has been in the bottle. I know he bottled it off of a keg. It's changed a little bit since I had it before.
Okay, well, the aroma...
It's got a little bit of spiciness to it. Like there's cinnamon or some sort of spice in it, which it did not have initially. So I don't know if it's the bottle or what, or, you know, maybe I had eaten dinner before I had it the last time.
It could have been.
But...
well, the aroma is interesting. It's got a lot of fruit. There's roast there. I get some
a
little chocolate note.
Super complex.
It is extremely complex. The caramel and the roast all married together very, very well. The English fruitiness from the yeast works out very well. It's not over the top to where it's just fruity pebbles.
But it is sweet.
Yes.
And one thing I'll say is that when you call a beer sweet, I typically think of that as a negative thing, and in this beer, it's good. I like it. That's the lactose is there, but it's not too much. It's just a really cool recipe. I really like it a lot. I need to keg mine because I think I'll go through this pretty quick.
This one's nice. The flavor does the same thing as the aroma. It brings in some of that roast character. The balanced, just enough hops just to balance it out, but then the additional sweetness, it gives it a nice rich complexity. I mean, you put 8 malts in it, so you're expected to be rather complex.
8 malts. When I pulled the ingredients for this, it made me mad.
Yeah, I think you can only need to use 2 to 3 malts max for 90% of your beers you make. Right. And some people will shoot me for saying that, but
no, I agree with you completely on that. I'm a big fan of simplicity. I've gotten more and more simple with my recipe design as time has gone on, and I think my beers have gotten better as I've gotten simple, with a few exceptions. You know, there's a few recipes I have that I have a lot of malts and never anything with this many malts.
You can't make an imperial stout without a bunch of
right.
malts. But and I think sometimes brewers will start using a lot of different malts to give it certain characteristics that they're not picking up from their process. And then as they really dive in and start to look at their process, they'll start pulling out, just the simple fact of when you start your boil. Do you start it with 1 inch in your pot, or do you start it when it's full? That affects what your final beer is going to be like. You get more kettle caramelization when you have only 1 inch in there and it's high sugars. And so I talk about this quite a bit when we start talking about making Pilsners, and like this Golden Strong earlier, a lot of times you don't want to start the boil until it's full.
Right.
So that way you
don't want a real vigorous boil either. You don't want any melanoidin production or caramelization or whatever you want to call
Correct.
it.
That's just matching the style.
I think too, it's a lot of fun when you're designing recipes to throw a bunch of stuff in there, and it's just one of those things. It's a curve of your home brewing, just like a curve of your craft beer drinking. Like with sour beers, when I got into sour beers, I wanted the sourest damn thing I could get, and it just give me the sour side. And eventually it tapers off where you're like, okay, give me something really complex and pleasing with just a little bit of sour in there, And the same thing with the recipe design. You're like, there's all these cool malts for me to work with and all these great flavors. Let's just do what we can to put it, and eventually you just kind of mellow out on it a little bit and you realize, okay, I just need a few things in here, and like you say, your process does the rest of the work for you. I will say that I think that this was a really excellent fermentation on this beer.
No doubt about it. It gives it just the right amount of the English fruity characteristics. It didn't overly dry it out. With that much lactose helps a lot as well, and that much crystal malts. I've
Here we
done
go.
this.
He sent me the PDF on it.
Oh, fun! So just give us that malt bill so we can hear what that one's all about.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got. Okay, it's not going to give me percentages here, but we've got pale malt, Crystal 120, flaked oats, lactose, special roast, Crystal 77, pale chocolate, Caramunic 3, and Carafa 2. Okay, so it's the Carafa I was confusing with the Caramunic.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, eight malts and lactose.
Yeah, just make it all crazy. But hey, it puts the beer right in the style. Like I said, it's supposed to kind of be like cola. And if somebody didn't tell you what it was, you start saying, hey, it does kind of have that cola note.
And he used the London ESB ale, the 1968. I love that yeast. Love it. And I think that's a perfect yeast for this. The esters in it were really nice.
Yes,
I thought his fermentation was really clean on it. What a fun recipe to brew, and what a cool beer to have in your keg. I just really enjoy it. So I'm glad that Chris got me to brew that, because it's one I would not have brewed on my own, just because I forgot how good it was. It's been a long time since Zach has been around, and really, really happy.
That was a fun one.
Yeah.
So, hey, Aaron, we're going to talk to you a little bit.
Mr. Rogers. We can't go a show without talking about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it was fun. We got a chance, and I think we've talked about this at least twice now on the show.
That's just you and I.
Discount
we've
double
talked
check.
about it on Come and Brew It too, because we enjoyed it so much. He sent us like 6 bottles of this.
Oh yes.
So we had it around, I think, on 2 different shows. We brought it out just to drink and have fun while we were talking, and I think every time I drink it, I like it more. Yeah. I just thought it was a fantastic beer.
Well, one of the things, and I knew this when I said it, and always looking back, I sent Aaron into uncharted territory, into rough waters. Anytime that you look at mixed styles and you take a lager and a Belgian that are drastically different and you throw them together, you're going to get strange comments. You're going to get some people who get it and some people who don't get it, and just knowing some of the behind the scenes, and that's what's different about this show. We had the privilege of knowing all the behind the scenes on this style, which gives us an advantage when it comes to it, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this show this way, is to be able to have some fun and then see what happens. You could probably enter it 18 times and get 18 different results, because it just depends on who's going to get it. He ended up with a nice score on it. He got a lot of the same characteristics we talked about. He got phenolics. He got the spicy note from the hops. He got all of that on his score sheet. But sometimes the judges don't see the same thing that we see. I would have loved to be reporting, hey, he got a first place. Unfortunately, I'm not doing that today. But it was a lot of fun. It was good and interesting to read somebody else's score sheet on the same beer that we had.
So I want to talk about it a little bit, because what we said on the show here was that it was something that it was definitely not a true Belgian double.
Yes.
It was something that should be entered in a mixed style category, which is always a roll of the dice, because you never know who you're going to get tasting it. Not only are they going to be familiar with both styles that you're calling it, are they going to be open-minded enough to realize when you do that, it's really you're not holding it strictly to either one. It's just kind of an idea about what the beer is supposed to be. And having drank a lot of Aaron's beers and a lot of what he does, that's exactly how he brews.
Yes.
Is just an idea of, this is an idea I have, and I want to make it like that and just make it really fun to drink and a good beer. And in that regard, I think he's incredibly successful with most of the beers he brews, and the ones that he sent us. There's been a couple of them that I thought I didn't even like the idea, and then I drank them and thought, well, just a really well executed beer. And I thought that with that beer, when I looked at the recipe, I thought, I don't know. And then we drank it, and I loved it. I loved it the night we drank it, but I loved it even more when we were just drinking it as a beer to have on the table while we were doing the show, and I wasn't thinking about it too much. And just able to enjoy it for what it was. And I thought, like if a brewery locally was brewing this would be a go-to order for me when I went to it. And that's what I thought. Now, there were a couple different comments on his score sheets that struck me. One was both of them were coming up with some sort of metallic off flavor. If there's one thing we've learned on this show when we look at score sheets after competitions, because every year after Bluebonnet, we do score sheets and we talk about things, and there's been times when the outrage starts, and then we open up a bottle of that beer to drink while we're looking at the score sheet, and we realize, oh, this is also a bad bottle. And I think that they got an off bottle on this one.
This one, we drank it about the exact same time this one would have been judged. And, everybody picks up the different things. And I will tell you, judges are wrong. I've been wrong. And I'll tell you all the time. But keep in mind, I might have been wrong and gave you a 45 in first place, and then you entered it 10 more times and got 20s every single time. Or I gave you the 20, and every single other time that you enter it, you get 40s. Then you got to see where that consistency goes. This was a unique beer for him. If he chooses to make it again and send it another competition, I'd suggest it just to see. I think it'll stump judges. And
I agree with you on that. Well, that's the other comment that was on there was the overall impression, which that's really what I go to a lot of times when I'm trying to think, what did this judge think? And if you're curious about why they wrote what they did in the overall impression, that's when you go back to the other things where they list what they tasted and that kind of thing. Well, in the overall impression from one of them, which was a pretty qualified judge, certified BJCP and a Cicerone.
Yes. And
she said, what is it? Is it a double? Is it a Belgian or a Czech dark lager? And it's like, well, that's kind of the point. That's kind of the point. It's not supposed to be either one. It's supposed to have a little bit from this and a little bit from that. If you're looking to put a fine point on it, you're drinking it wrong.
Yes, but like I said, that's the roll of the dice.
That's exactly the roll of the dice. Yeah,
the rough waters we sent Aaron in, and it's okay. I hope he had a good experience out of it.
Well, with a beer like that, you have to expect that in competition, and I would say 7 times out of 10, you're going to get something like that out of judges. Because and we're all guilty of it. We sit down at a judging table and we're like, we're here to put this in a box.
Yes.
We're here to say this is this thing in this way. And we get hung up on that a little bit or a lot, Mm-hmm. And I just think that's what happened with it. And you're going to get that with that mixed style thing. If it's not exactly those two things, you better hope you have a judge that says, yeah, but I get the idea. And it was well executed and I liked it.
Yes. Yes, that's the only way.
That's the only way.
And then, again, you never know what may happen. Well, I'd like to tease something. We're going to do a special show. And yes, this will be all about me, James show. But really, it's not about James. It's about the yeast that is on the market coming out in our area, at least in Texas, and we'll see how it goes through. There's a couple down in San Antonio making native strains from the community. They're actually called community cultures, and they've gone out and taken some swabs from different areas within Texas, within Big Bend, Houston, San Antonio, and then isolating down to a true Saccharomyces that they can use for brewing, testing it all the way to the point that they know that it has the alcohol tolerance and the attenuation to be able to make a satisfying beer. And they came out and visited our local club. I went ahead and got a couple of different ones. They gave me some characteristics, and I'd ask them, have you brewed with this one? Has somebody done this style? And they're like, no. I said, okay, well, I'm going to do that. And so I've got 3 different yeast and 3 different styles. Call my shot, and we'll taste them on the air. and made 2 of them. I'm going to make 2 more, and will not try them until we come to.
Oh, really?
We're
going to go blind.
We're going blind.
Oh, nice.
I will have no preconceived notions beforehand. Looking forward to seeing. And we'll have an American Blonde. We'll have a Kolsch, and we'll have a Best Bitter.
Nice.
So that'll
excited
be
about
a
that.
special edition Final Gravity. We'll talk about the recipes. I keep it simple, so it'll be a lot of fun.
That's great. I'm really looking forward to that. Listeners, y'all have done a great job of sending us beers. Please keep it up. We're really enjoying evaluating them. I think we've had some really excellent beers on here, and even ones where we have constructive criticism on what to change on them are all beers that I would be more than happy to sit down and drink several pints of. We've just had some great ones. So please contact me at brandontherep@gmail.com. Let me know if you got a beer you want to send to us. I'll send you the submission form and how to get it to us, and we'd love to have some more of your beers. Thank you very much for listening, and stay tuned for more.
Yes, thank you very much. Enjoy.